Hi.
Very good. Thank you all so much for coming out to Bank Street tonight. I'm so glad that you're here to see Alex, Gino. For those of you who are on social media, Alex's Twitter handle is, I do have to look at my notes, @LXGino, Gino. And you can also tag Bank Street Library, Bank Street College, Bank Street School for Children. I'm not going to give you all of them, you can look them up. Now, I started getting requests from parents and students for copies of George way before it ever was published. And I was so relieved when our books finally came. Kids, teachers, and families devoured Melissa's story. Few books have taken root in the hearts and minds of the Bank Street community so thoroughly. It is not unusual for kids to bring up George in casual conversations with each other, or for teachers to say, "How would Melissa from the book George feel about that?" during class. Some quotes from kids. "This is one of the only books I've ever read that made me wonder who I am and told me I could be whoever I wanted to be. I feel like George opened my eyes to a whole new way of reading a book more deeply and more passionately. I really liked the way the author said she and her throughout the whole book. It gives young readers a perspective on life and how you should treat people. I can't tell you how many kids who have just finished George have appeared in my office asking, Allie, where are the other books by Alex Gino? There's good news for us all. This upcoming fall, Alex's second book is set to be published. I was going to do a little pitch for it, but I'm actually going to let Alex talk about it more. Alex has been an activist and an advocate for LGBTQIA+ rights since 1997. They have also learned and are learning about racism, ableism, intersectionality, privilege, feminism, and more. And they are paying it forward every day. Their organizing includes work with the University of Pennsylvania, the fat positive queer feminist organization No Lose, and We Need Diverse Books. Alex uses they, them pronouns. Alex, welcome to Bank Street. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm excited to be here. First of all, I'm warning that I live in California now, and I came to the East Coast and I visited my 4 and 9-year-old niblets, my sister's kids, and they were adorable and they were vectors of illness. And so I coughed from the depths of my soul. So, I mean, if I seem soulless now, it's pretty much because I coughed it out last week. So, please bear with me. I'm going to do my best. And luckily, I have this amazing mic from
Lizzie.
Lizzie, who's amazing. And it's just like, here, we shall save you with modern technology. So I am part robot now. It's pretty cool. I'm just gonna live this now, Lizzie. You could just like walk around with me, right? And just like, yeah, just get me from place to place. It's really perfect. So, thanks to Bank Street for having me. Thanks for Allie Bruce for getting me here. Thanks for being here. It is less cold than it was, but it's still cold, and it's still a weeknight, and you could be at home with TV. So good on you for like engaging in community and literature and learning and, you know, saving the world and changing things. Yay! Yay. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to read from the book because that sort of comes, like brings us all into the space and it's kind of fun. And then I'm going to talk for a little bit because I have stuff to say and that's why I'm here, is to say stuff. Hopefully it'll be, you know, relevant and useful and important. And then what I really want to focus on is questions and answers because every room is different. Right? This is the third event I'm doing today. I know. I did a 5th grade classroom in a public school and standard classroom, and that was fantastic. And then I did a middle school GSA, which was also fantastic, and now I'm here. But that is 3 very different groups of people. And if I tried to say the same things to all of you, it would be really, really dumb. And even within a group of educators and book-minded and thinking and people with children type people, we're still going to have a lot of diversity of thought and knowledge base and all these different things. So, long story short, I'm not going to talk so much. So, I'm going to start with the beginning of the book because it is, make sure that we don't have any spoilers. Just as a show of hands so I know what's going on in the room, would you raise your hand if you've ever seen this book before? Like before right now? Raise your hand if you've ever touched it before. If you opened it, if you read it, all the way to the last page. Wow! Okay, so for those of you that's true for, this will be a little boring. Deal with it from the very beginning. Copyright 2015. Sorry, it's so dumb, and I'm like, this audience will laugh at it. I've got to do it. All right, chapter 1, Secrets. George pulled a silver house key out of the smallest pocket of a large red backpack. Mom had sewn the key in so that it wouldn't get lost, but the yarn wasn't quite long enough to reach the keyhole if the bag rested on the ground. Instead, George had to steady herself awkwardly on one foot while the backpack rested on her other knee. She wiggled the key until it clicked into place. Stumbling inside, she called out, "Hello?" No lights were on. Still, George needed to be certain the house was empty. The door of Mom's old room was open and the bedsheets were flat. Scott's room was unoccupied as well. Sure that she was alone, George went into the third bedroom, opened the closet door, and surveyed the pile of stuffed animals and assorted toys inside. They were undisturbed. Mom complained that George hadn't played with any of the toys in years and said they should be donated to needy families. But George knew they were needed here to guard her most prized and secret collection. Fishing beneath the teddy bears and fluffy bunnies, George felt for a flat denim bag. Once she had it in hand, she ran to the bathroom, shut the door, and turned the lock. Clutching the bag in tightly wrapped arms, George slid to the ground. As she tipped the denim bag on its side, the silky, slippery pages of a dozen magazines fell out onto the tiled bathroom floor. Covers promised how to have perfect skin, 12 fresh summer haircuts, how to tell a hottie you like it, and wild winter wardrobes. George was only a few years younger than the girl smiling at her from the glossy pages. She thought of them as her friends. George picked up an issue from last April that she had looked through countless times before. She browsed the busy pages with a crisp flip, flip, flip that stirred up the faint smell of paper. She paused on a photo of 4 girls at the beach, then modeled swimsuits in a line, each striking a pose. A guide on the right-hand side of the page recommended various styles based on body type. The bodies looked the same to George. They were all girls' bodies. On the next page, 2 girls sat laughing on a blanket, their arms around each other's shoulders. One wore a striped bikini, the other wore a polka-dot one piece with cutouts at the hips. If George were there, she would fit right in, giggling and linking her arms in theirs. She would wear a bright pink bikini and she would have long hair that her new friends would love to braid. They would ask her name and she would tell them, "My name is Melissa." Melissa was the name she called herself in the mirror when no one was watching, and she could brush her flat reddish-brown hair to the front of her head as if she had bangs. George flipped past flashy ads for book bag organizers, nail polish, the latest phones, and even tampons. She skipped over an article on how to make your own bracelets and another on advice for talking to boys. George's magazine collection had started by accident. 2 summers ago, she had noticed an old issue of Girl's Life in the recycling bin at the library. The word girl had caught her eye instantly, and she slipped the magazine in her jacket to look at later. Another girl's magazine soon followed, this time rescued from a trash can down the block from her house. The very next weekend, she had found the denim bag at a yard sale for $1. It was just the size of a magazine and had a zipper along the top. It was as if the universe had wanted her to be able to store her collection safely. George settled on a 2-page spread about framing your face with makeup. George had never worn makeup, but she pored over the range of colors on the left side of the page. Her heart raced in her chest. She wondered what it would really feel like to wear lipstick. George loved to put on chapstick. She used it all winter, whether or not her lips were really chapped. And every spring she hid the tube from Mom and wore it until it ran out. George jumped when she heard a clatter outside. She looked out the window to the front door directly below. No one was in sight, but Scott's bike lay in the driveway. The back wheels was still spinning. And Scott's bike, That meant Scott. Scott was George's older brother, a high school freshman. The hair on George's neck stood up. Soon, heavy footsteps climbed the stairs to the second floor. The locked bathroom door rattled. It was as if Scott were rattling George's heart inside her ribcage. Bang, bang, bang. Ooh, that worked. You in there, George? Yeah. The shiny magazines were spread across the tile floor. She gathered them into a pile and stuffed them into the denim bag. Her heart was thumping almost as loudly as Scott's foot against the door. "No, bro, I gotta go," Scott yelled from the far side. George zipped up the bag as quietly as she could and looked for a place to stash it. She couldn't walk out with it. Scott would want to know what was inside. The bathroom's one cabinet was stuffed with towels and didn't shut all the way. No good either. Finally, she hung the bag from the shower head and closed the curtain, desperately hoping this wouldn't be the moment Scott discovered personal hygiene. Scott rushed in as soon as George opened the door, unzipping his jeans before he reached the toilet. George exited quickly, closed the door, and leaned on the wall outside to catch her breath. The bag was probably still swinging in the shower. George hoped it wouldn't hit against the curtain or worse, fall and land in the bathtub with blood. George didn't want to be standing near the bathroom when Scott came out, so she went down to the kitchen. She poured herself a glass of orange juice and sat at the table, her skin tingling. Outside, a cloud passed overhead, and the room grew darker. When the bathroom door banged open, Scott jumped in her seat, splashing juice on her hand. She realized she had barely been breathing. Thump, 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 thump. Scott tromped downstairs, a DVD case in his hand. He opened the refrigerator door, pulled out the carton of orange juice, and took a long swig. He wore a thin black t-shirt and jeans with a small hole in the knee. He hadn't gotten a haircut in months, and dark brown curls formed a mop on his head. "Sorry if I busted in on you while you were taking a dump." Scott wiped the juice off his lips with a forearm. "I wasn't taking a dump," George said. "Then what took you so long?" George hesitated. "Oh, I know," Scott said. "I'll bet you had a magazine in there." George froze, her mouth half open and her brain mid-thought. The air felt warm and her mind swirled. She put her hands on the table to make sure she was still there. "That's it," Scott grinned, oblivious to George's panic. "That's my little bro, growing up and looking at dirty magazines." "Oh," George said out loud. She knew what dirty magazines were. She almost laughed. The girls in the magazines she was looking at wore a lot more clothes than that, even the ones at the beach. George relaxed, at least a little. "Don't worry, George, I won't tell Mom. Anyway, I'm heading back out. Just had to get this." Scott shook the black plastic box he held in his hand, and the DVD inside rattled. "Haven't even seen it yet, but it's supposed to be a classic. It's German. The title means something like the blood of evil. When the zombies know there's one guy's arm off and kill him, the other guy has to use the gnawed-off arm of his dead best friend to fight the zombies. It's awesome!" "It sounds gross," George said. "It is!" Scott nodded enthusiastically. He took another gulp of orange juice, put the carton back in the fridge, and headed for the door. "I'll let you get back to thinking about girls," Scott joked on the way out. George dashed up to the bathroom, rescued her bag, and buried it deep inside her closet, under the toys and stuffed animals. She put a pile of dirty clothes on top, just in case. Then she closed the door and collapsed face first onto her bed, her hands crossed over her head, pressing her elbows to her ears and wishing she was someone else. Anyone else. Number 1, thank yous. Number 2, read. Number 3, story of book. Okay, story of book. So, when I was growing up, there were not books with trans characters in them in children's books. There were not children's books with LGBT characters in them. And that meant I didn't have access to information, I didn't have access to story, I didn't have access to who I was. It wasn't until I was 19 when I found the word genderqueer in a book by Kate Bornstein that I had language. And I took that word and I ate it and I became it. Because it already was me, but I just hadn't had the tool. And so in around 2003, which would be a little while ago now, I went to the bookstore and I went to the children's section because I've always been interested in children's books. I like children's books better than adult books. So I went to the section as I was like coming out as queer, and like there was nothing there in 1996 or 7 when I was coming out. And then in 2003, there was still nothing there. And I said, you know what, something has to be there. We were starting to get gay characters in children's books, but the notion of transness was still absolutely not being spoken about, as if it wasn't a thing, right? As if it wasn't real, as if we could just have something not happen by not talking about it, which is something that we often see around and about in the world, and especially in terms of what we talk about with children. People get very, very nervous about talking with children. And so I started writing a book, and I figured no one's ever going to publish it. And in 2003, no one was ever going to publish it, right? And I've talked with my editor, and he's like, yeah, no, in 2003, no one ever would have published it. So I wrote for a while, wrote for a couple years, got a draft done. Showed it to some friends, and they gave some feedback, and then I did a little bit more work, showed it to a friend who was an editor, not in children's publishing, but someone who could give me some feedback. And she sat down with page 1 and she said, okay, this is a great start. It's like after 4 years, I'm like, what are you talking about, great start? Page 1, do this, and this. Page 2, do this, don't do this. Remember that thing you did from page 1? Redo it here. And this, and this. Page 3. So you got to about page 5 before I was like, okay, I get the point. Editing takes a lot of work. Took a lot of iterations. And then by about 2012 or so, when I was really ready to be able to send it out, 2013, culture was shifting. And so a character who in early versions had never known the word transgender, suddenly it was going to be ridiculous for her not to have found it, given that she was looking for it. So 2014 comes around, and the book goes and gets sold. And then 2015, it's out in the world, and now here I am several years later, talking with people about it, this notion that because of this thing that I didn't have, other people now have it. So that's like really freaking cool. But that doesn't mean we're done. It's like first of all, one book is not enough. Books are consumable. The fact that we need one means that we need more. And we need more stories that are not just about being trans. We need stories about trans kids who play baseball. We need stories about trans kids whose parents are dealing with immigration. We need stories about like all sorts of whatever's in the world, right? Right now there is very little out there, and what there is out there is mostly stories of white trans kids figuring out how to tell people that they're trans. Which is better than nothing, right? But we still need more and more and more. So, one of the things that I think about, or thought about as I was writing, was who the book is for. Because there's an easy answer, which is to say, oh, this is a great book to give to trans kids. And there's a trouble with that, which is that as it goes back to that circle of I didn't know who I was because I didn't have language. So if you've already found someone who's trans, yes, certainly those kids need support. But also, it's not a book just to give to trans kids for a couple of reasons. First of all, because you don't know who's trans. And secondly, because we as trans people need cis allies, cisgender allies, people who are not trans. And that means that people who are not trans have to have some sort of exposure to transness. reading a book with a trans character cannot and will not make a person transgender. Leslie Newman, who's a wonderful lesbian author, has said she read thousands of books with straight characters as a kid, and not one of them made her straight. She already was who she was, but having access to information changes how we can talk about it. And the road back from isolation and from pain and from being told that you're not who you are is long. And it hurts, and it takes years and years and years to recover if you ever do. So if we can avoid that, if we can circumvent that by supporting the people who have a sense of who they are, we should do that. Trans people are at really high risk for self-harm and for harm from others. And so the more that we can support them so that they don't have harm from themselves, the more they can have resources to help mitigate the harm from others, the better. More on the harm from others. Most people reading my book are not trans, but anyone reading my book can meet someone trans, or meet someone that they think is trans, meet someone who they identify as trans, or who tells them that they're trans. If you have, rephrase, the first 100 times I think that I saw transness in media or talked about, it was an insult or a joke or something bad. I can't imagine who I would be now if I had gotten some sort of positive notion of what transness was back then. And there's this really, so there's a dreadful statistic, and I don't know the exact numbers, and they change regularly, but more than 20 trans women were killed in the United States last year, most of them trans women of color. And there's this is not a community large enough for 20 to be a reasonable number. Like, 20 is never a reasonable number of people to be killed. But it's a crisis, right? It's an epidemic. And there's this very vivid image in my head, and it's kind of hokey, but really like it. Takes place maybe 10, 15 years from now, 20 years from now. It is a dark Saturday night. It is like 3 in the morning, drizzling for ambiance, and there's this really drunk off his butt, dude bro walking down the street like rugby playing, PBR drinking, like blah, 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 right? And in the other direction is someone who he identifies as a trans woman. And kind of in his like, one of the things that actually manages to come to his drunken mind is, oh, like Melissa. And he keeps walking. And she keeps walking. And nothing happens. And I don't know how I managed to get chills over nothing happening, but I do. Because just nothing happens. And that's the goal, right? The goal is that this story be outdated. Why is everyone making such a big deal of it? Why is it doing that? It's not outdated at this point. There are kids who are absolutely dealing with issues like these, but that's the goal, that it be outdated. So George, in fact, has been challenged. There are people who are not, I don't even want to say not ready for it. There are people who are afraid to talk with their children. There are people who are afraid to have conversations with their children. There are people who are afraid to know less than their children or not know more than their children. And so the book has been challenged. It's in fact it is number 3 on the American Library Association's top challenge books for last year. All 5 of the top challenge books from last year have LGBT content. And that's why they're being challenged. Yeah, like, and it tells you something about what people are afraid of right now. They're afraid of the gays. And that's sad. It's right. But knowing that it's there means it's something that we can acknowledge and address and respond to. The good thing is that challenge books generally, the challenges usually fail. And there are usually greater book sales because of that. Because people don't like to be told what not to read. The concern, though, that got so upset about my book, first of all, is like, it has trans this in it. I don't know how to argue with you on that. It does have trans this in it. You're right. Like, okay, you noticed that. Good. I don't, like, it's not a problem, but yeah, I can't fight that. It's got trans this in it. But the other thing that comes up is whether it's age appropriate. Because of things that got mentioned, like dirty magazines. And to be perfectly honest, 4th graders know what dirty magazines are, right? But even if there was one who wasn't, and some who found out, or maybe they don't, right? Maybe they don't, I don't know. Maybe their parents don't know what dirty magazines are, I don't know. But if they don't, kids are used to not knowing stuff. Kids are used to glossing over the thing that doesn't make sense to them. That's just fine. No. Turns out they do know. But that's all a farce to say that it's about that. Right? It's not about that. It's about being afraid to talk with kids. And this issue that comes up of age appropriate hurts because there is no age before which it is appropriate to be compassionate. And that's that's what it's about. It's about compassion. It's about seeing other people in the world. There was a parent who tweeted at me, because yes, I do have a Twitter presence. And it's very fascinating. The person tweeted and said that she'd read the book with her kid, her 7-year-old kid, and the kid came back and said, "Hey, my stuffed bunny is trans." And I thought that was the most amazing, age-appropriate, like Piaget level stuff going on there, right? Because it was not, ooh, am I trans? Like she never looked at it as like, maybe I don't know myself. She looked at it as, what if I met someone trans? How would I be an ally? What are the things that I would say and do? She found herself as a Kelly, which is the best friend in the book. So yeah, that was just a really sweet moment. Thank you for your story of book. It's for trans and cis kids, age appropriate. So I am from New York. I grew up on Staten Island. I went to Stuyvesant High School, and so I love doing things in New York because hi, I'm home. And I was just at Lambda. So I'm here. And I also did doing some events with the Lambda Literary project where they bring authors into schools. And first of all, I was never that popular in junior high school. Like they swore me, and I'm like, you don't understand. I was a pariah in junior high. But that's the fact that we are here is exciting. And we are in 2018, which means we are in some very interesting times, times of change. And if we've got a pendulum of justice, if we have a pendulum of justice that swings towards and away from justice, we are sort of doing both right now. And I'm fascinated by it, scared of it, but all I know how to do is pull the pendulum the right way. And so hopefully that's all we'll all do. Yeah. And with that, I wanted to start moving into some questions.
All right. I think rather than try to use a mic for questions, Alex, if you can repeat the question so that the camera can get it and everything, that'll be
I
great.
will do my best.
Are you okay calling on people?
Oh, I love to call on people.
Excellent.
I think you're and you're no. Yes.
Okay, I read the book, and I had a number of questions and comments, but I think they can be all summarized by saying that the character George seems to have a vision of girlhood and womanhood that is based on socially constructed stereotypes, that girls wear lipstick and pink and jump rope, and boys don't even wear chapstick. Well, boys do wear chapstick, men wear chapstick. And, you know, George sees an interview on television of a beautiful woman named Tina who has thick hair with blonde highlights and long sparkling fingernails. That's not my idea of a woman.
I can totally respond to that. First of all, well, no, I'll respond to it and then I'll say that. Yes, George is Melissa is a very girly girl. And part of that is about the fact when I was writing in 2003 and 2000 moving forward, thinking about it, the type of girl who would be most likely to be clear in herself as not a boy that young would be likely to be a girl for whom a lot of stereotypical feminine things really did fit. Further, there are some girls who are very, very girly, and I'm the kind of feminist that allows for that. I'm the kind of feminist that believes in sparkling pink, and I want to question and push back on the notion that, because there are a lot of people who are like, well, I can be a woman and be anything, and yes, and that includes being so stereotypically feminine and traditional. That's part of it. That is absolutely acceptable. As for the woman with the sparkling nails, that is actually based on a real live person. 20 points if anybody knows who it is. It's Jenna Mock. Yep, it's Jenna Mock, who's a trans woman. So yeah. Next question. All the way in the back.
So I'm one of the, looks like, few people in the room who hasn't had the chance to read it yet. So I'm curious with your comment on age appropriateness, because I know publishers and, you know, books are for generally certain ages. So what, maybe this is a controversial question for you, but what ages would you perceive this as? And also, just thinking about my oldest, my own personal child is a kindergartner. Are there books right now that are like entry points for early elementary?
Yes, absolutely. The book, the main character is in 4th grade. The book is generally pitched to ages 8 to 12, and absolutely in line with that. There's some kids younger than that they have the reading level, sure, and I'm finding that a lot of people older than that are also enjoying it. But 8 to 12 roughly. There are definitely books for younger readers. Librarian here is going to be your best resource on that, but I will say that they exist. What?
You know them.
I know them, well, here's the thing is that there are a lot of them that exist, and as of yet, to my knowledge, there's not a single one published by a trans person. And
I Am Jazz.
I Am Jazz is co-written by, you're right, I Am Jazz is co-written by Jazz Jennings. But outside of that, it is mostly cis people. So I Am Jazz, it's Jazz Jennings, who is a social figure, whatever. It's a pretty traditional story of like, hi, I'm a girl and these are the things I do. It's a perfectly good story. I also like Red by Michael C. Hall, which is not actually technically a trans story, but it has trans elements in it. The thing about having a book written by a cisgender person doesn't make it bad, but it does mean that it's coming from the outside, so it's something that I want to be conscious of, and often it is written by the parent of a trans person, which is something I want to be doubly cautious of. Parents are rightly so very involved in their children's lives, and they are not that they're children, and they're not necessarily part of the communities that their children are part of. So those are just some thoughts on that.
There's, if they want to buy them, there's their.
Oh, better yet, just go look at what the bookstore has out there, because that's right, we made recommendations of all of them and everything. This is why I have a librarian. Yeah, they'll all be out there. Yes. Yes, and then you below you. Yeah.
Talking about age appropriateness, I wanted to just riff on this lady's comment and ask you, as the book is about a 9-year-old and is geared to 9-year-olds, in the scene where George sees Tina and, you know, Tina's beauty and the nail polish and the hair, how does he understand? Excuse me. How does George understand androgen blockers, the cross-sex hormones that she references, and the SRS surgery, if at all, at that age?
In a very peripheral way. We generally in trans community, we don't call it SRS surgery anymore. We call them surgeries. There are multiple different surgeries. It would have been false to write 200 pages about a 9-year-old and never have her think about her body and what her body needs in the next few years. It came up on one page. I'm going to allow that. I don't know everything that she thinks about it the way a 9-year-old would think about it. Ooh, that looks like a good, that looks like that might help me. She does not know all the details. She does not need all the details. But she needs to know that there are tools and resources out there for her. Yes?
I did get a chance to read the book, and I just wanted to say that I was so in love with so many pieces of this book. If only all of us could have a friend like Kelly.
Right?
It was so beautiful. I wanted to tell you.
Oh, thank you so much. Be a Kelly. Be a Kelly.
I wanted to ask you more about Kelly. Maybe this isn't the place to ask you more about Kelly because you have to read the book and not know about her yet. But I would love to know more about her.
So, I will say a couple things about Kelly. I think Kelly got the way she is because of her family. She is the daughter of two, and it doesn't come up much in the story, but I'll give you the backstory. She's the daughter of two musicians, singer. Her mom was a singer, her dad's a guitarist and writes more than he's on stage. Her mom died young. And so she's always sort of been in the taking care of someone mode, someone who's just like not completely on the planet and kind of has to make sure that he gets dinner in him. So that sort of made her not quite mature, but sort of aware of other people. And I think that's where a lot of that came from. More questions?
In the back.
There's somebody in the back.
Oh, do it, please.
Okay, pretty far.
And I'm not doing a good job, please.
So my question was just kind of back to the stereotypes thing, how children might think of that. How would you explain to your child or a child why Melissa needs to be a girl and not just, a feminine boy? Or like, I guess a better way to say it is like, how would you explain to a child, like, what's the difference between boys and girls without focusing too much on the stereotypes?
Boys and girls, most people, okay, so if we want to go like the whole thing, is most people who are assigned male at birth turn out to be boys and grow up to be men. Most people who are assigned female at birth are girls and grow up to be women. That's not true for all people. Some people who are assigned male at birth find that they're really more of a girl. Some people who are assigned that they're girl at birth find that they're actually really more of a boy. Some people turn out to be neither. Some people turn out to be a little bit of both. And they go, oh, it's usually the adults who have a problem. Adults who think that they already know the things that are in the world, get confronted with something new. Whereas kids are always getting new things in the world. Kids are used to not knowing anything, and kids are used to taking in new information. And it's not super hard. And we can follow up with questions, you know, like, oh, so she's a girl because she has her hair long? No, she's a girl and she has her hair long. Lots of girls have their hair long. And if it goes from there, we can go into a whole thing about stereotypes and how stereotypes are problematic and how you get to do these things, but you don't have to do these things. And if someone says they are a boy, they are a boy. If someone says they are a girl, they are a girl. And kids have no trouble with that. I'm going to go for fresh questions first, if there are people who haven't asked one yet.
So I appreciate what you're saying about the necessity of a story that tells a sort of coming out story and a coming of age story. But what's next for you?
I love that question. There was a little teaser to that. So book 2 is not a sequel. Totally new topic. It is also middle grade. It is slightly older. It is a 6th grade girl. She lives in Piedmont, California, which is a little enclave of Oakland. And if you know it, you know it. It is where all the rich white people live, to put it bluntly. Not all of them, but it is demographically very different from Oakland. And her baby sister she is hearing. Her baby sister is born deaf, and she has a deaf black friend online who she thinks she's now in with, and she thinks that she knows more about the life than she actually does. And she makes mistakes, and she says the wrong things sometimes, and she has to learn how to apologize. She has to learn how to decenter herself. She has to learn how to actually ally and support people in her life. And then when there's an instance of ableist, racist police violence, she has to learn how to be there for her friend grieving without making it about her. So, you know, just a couple little things.
What's it going to be called?
Oh, what's it going to be called? What would, you just got to be in my life. It's called You Don't Know Everything, Jilly P. And it's going to be out this September from Scholastic.
Woohoo!
Yeah, in the back.
This is not like a trans-specific question. It's about like more about all sorts of marginalized identities and how we talk about them with kids. And you spoke to this a little bit. You said like not just stories about trans people coming out and discovering that about themselves, or but like stories about them playing baseball or whatever. And I'm wondering like how we at like especially to children who are cis or who are white or who are able-bodied, how we help them understand that like we don't we both at the same time as we like understand the experience and any oppressions that people might be experiencing, that it's also not the entirety of the identity, that they are like complex people just like us, and like balancing that, making it a non-neutral thing, but I don't know. So,
Right, that difference is not, if I'm here with a question, and I'm doing a terrible job of including me, but when we show people who are different as their difference and the problems it causes them, that is a very limited view of who those people are. That's sort of what your question, yeah. Like, so what do we do with that? We point it out when it happens, and we aim for more. We're on a trajectory where 10 years ago there was nothing for trans specifically, and so I want to figure out really what, like, I don't want to just answer that question to answer it. Like, it's how do we see people as whole people? And how do we see people not just as the thing about them that makes them diverse, but how their diversity influences their lives without being their lives. And that's nuanced. That's nuanced. Part of it is by bringing it up, so thank you. Part of it is by going home and talking about it. And part of it is the job of publishing to provide stories that reflect that. Don't, like, admittedly, if I had the answer and I had been hiding it, like, that would have been wrong. Like, I should have, like, if I had that answer, I would have already shared it. But I think it's about these moments right here where we take a moment and just, like, recognize that that is a thing. I'm not happy with my answer, but
Good.
yeah.
I loved your book, and I think it just brings exposure to trans people, and it makes it, when I was growing up, this was not discussed at all. There were no books. I mean, a girl who was more masculine was a tomboy. Boys were gay, or they were fags, or whatever. And I think it's just exposure, exposure, exposure until it's no longer, oh my God, who's that? What is that? And it just becomes commonplace. And I think your book is fantastic.
Thank you. And it is about exposure, and it's about exposure in non-dramatic ways. Like, it's purposefully a very small story. Like, nothing really happens. And in fact, one of the important things to me is she's never outed. She comes out to people, but she's never outed against her will. Because that's one of the oldest tropes about LGBT people. And it puts us completely out of control and agency. And I didn't need to see it in my book. Yeah.
I have two questions. One is, why Charlotte's Web? You referenced to Charlotte's Web because that's also, I love that book. And two, would you consider making this a film if it was offered? I'm just curious because to me it seems like it could be a fabulous film as well.
Charlotte's Web is the most autobiographical part of the book. I cried when Charlotte died in school, and the way I remember it, I was the only one who did. And I had to look around and figure out who the monsters around me were that were crying. Yeah. Like, did you not see? And so it was sort of just like, that's just what it was. And then at some point in edits, I started questioning it and like, why should it be this book? There's so many other books there. Why am I picking this book by this old dead white guy? Like, what's that about? What am I, like, check my own things going on here? And then I was thinking about it more, and it's a story of friendship. And it's a story of allyship. It's a story about helping someone else. And even better, it's a story about a girl that the world doesn't see as a girl because all they see is an ugly spider. So, yeah, she hides. Right? And movie. If you can keep a secret. I've been keeping the secret for a while. It is in the works. We are moving towards it. It is not, and it can fall apart at any point, but it is in theory. Oh, kid question. By the way, no pressure. Kid questions are better than adult.
I really like your book, and I was wondering how Kelly and George actually met.
How did Kelly and George actually meet? I just told you, kid questions are the best questions. How did Kelly and George meet? Kelly and Melissa. Kelly and Melissa, how did they meet? My suspicion, I don't know, but what came to me is that it was the first day of school, and Kelly was playing with glue on her hands. You know how you can make it, no, you can't do this. No, you can't just put glue on your hand and then make a cool little glue ball. It doesn't work, really. I didn't spend most of my 5th grade doing that. And Melissa gives one, Kelly gives one to Melissa, and Melissa goes, wow, what is that? And she says, I made it with my hand. She's like, that's really gross. And Melissa goes, and Kelly goes, yeah, but it's cool. And then they were just friends from that. I just made that up. Is that good? That's what I got. Yeah.
Hey, I'm very curious about your choice to call the book George. I really appreciate the she from the beginning and through. Why'd you call it George?
Okay. When I was writing it, I was calling it Girl George. And that was really funny 30 years ago. Thank you. There was a singer who was very flamboyant in the 80s, and their name is Boy George. And so I was writing about Girl George, and it was cute and clever, and I never thought about it more than that. And then when Scholastic got it, they said, we want to take the name Girl off the cover. And I was like, whoa, what do you got against girls? And they're like, no, we don't want there to be anyone who doesn't read it, and we don't want them to have that excuse. The word was girl on the cover, so they thought it wasn't for them. Of course, a boy's name on the cover can apparently still be for everyone. But there would be people who want to read it because it had the word girl on the cover. Great, take it off. Never thought about it again. Till I realized I dead named my main character. Dead name is a concept in the trans community of using a name that a person never wishes to be used about them ever again in their lives. And I put it on the cover. And that's terrible. That's awful. It is a mistake. Should not have done it. Can't change it now. Luckily, she's not real, so I didn't actually hurt her feelings. And this comfort that we're left with, where we don't even want to say the name of the book, because it is not, if you feel just at all uncomfortable, you've gotten some sort of insight into trans experience. So that's where I go with it. Silver lining. Yes.
Can I ask another question? So I think that some of the questions earlier we're getting at is, I realize a much bigger question than this book, but what it defines male versus female, or men versus women. You seem to be saying a little while ago, it's whatever a person says they are. But I mean, I'm going to out myself as a mental health professional. I've certainly come across many people who thought they were something they weren't. A classic example is the anorexic who's convinced she is fat when she weighs 85 pounds.
Is that a question? Because basically what I'm hearing you do is questioning the existence of transness, and I'm really not...
I'm asking for your definition.
Okay, stop. You asked me a question. But it sounds like you're questioning. I gave you my definition. Someone says there are boys, a boy. Someone says there are girls, a girl. And if that doesn't work for you, and you are questioning my right to define my gender, and I'm not okay with being questioned at my own event, what I will say is, trans therapy works. People who are anorexic and they continue to not eat will die. People who are trans and do not get access to trans services kill themselves at frightening levels. People who are trans and do not have access to the things they need to do to put themselves in the world they need to be are in terrible mental health state. People who get the services they need, people who are able to transition, people who are able to be in the world they need to be in the ways they need to be and are supported, are happier and have a better quality of life. And I don't have anything more to say about it than that. I'm going to go on to the next question, or are we?
Yeah. I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about some of your organizing work, and particularly maybe about We Need Diverse Books and the work that you've done with that, and what we can all do to support that work.
Okay. So We Need Diverse Books is a thing that started in around 2015. No, started in 2015 in response to a panel that had happened on the national stage about diversity. That was I think it was all white men on stage.
That's correct.
It was a problem. And so We Need Diverse Books is a group of children's writers and book people who are focused on the diversity of diversity. Meaning diversity is about race, absolutely, and it is about gender, it's about sexuality, it's also about disability, it's also about immigrant status, it's also about poverty, it's also about a lot of different things. It's about religion and so on. And so what we do is we work within publishing and around publishing to help start changing these things. We have internship programs to get people of color and queer people and diverse people into publishing houses, because while books are both windows and mirrors, you may have heard that said by librarian Regine Sims Bishop, a window book is a book where you're seeing someone else, a mirror book is where you see yourself reflected, and we need them both. Books get bought based on being mirror books. So unless we have people in publishing who are diverse, the book will never get bought. Because a window book doesn't sell the book. It's the finding yourself in it that makes the book happen. I'm actually right now, I'm a mentor. I've just started a mentorship with a writer who is working on her first middle grade novel, and so many marginalized writers have such less access to people who are already in the field, to ask questions of them, to get support from. So we do things like that. We present panels and just sorts of great things like that. Is that good?
You can go to the website if you want to support them.
Oh, there's a website!
Diversebooks.org.
We need diversebooks.org. Is it just diversebooks.org?
Either one works.
Either one. Would you like to come up here?
Sorry.
Do we have time for more questions?
It's like a 10-second question.
Yeah.
When you say books get bought, do you mean bought by publishers or bought by?
I meant by publishers.
Yeah.
Books make acquisitions. Thank you for clarifying that. Books are acquired based on being mirror books. Quick, super quick.
It's just a comment. I came across this book because I'm taking a class, and I read it through a syllabus, and I just wanted to thank you. I really, really enjoyed it, and I would not have come across it without that. And I have since shared it with other parents and other people, and I think it's a beautiful book, and I think what you said about teaching children compassion at an early age is really what I got out of this. I think the most significant moment for me was reading your interview at the end when you spoke about Melissa and how that's how you want her to be addressed in a classroom. And at that moment, it was just for me, I was like, oh Lord, this is what she meant. And this is, I felt I connected at that point, and I just wanted to thank you for sharing the story with us. I thought it was great.
Thanks. Pitch for the book, there is an FAQ in the soft cover. So if you have the hardback, you might want to get this.
We do have more time if you're okay to keep going.
Oh, I can keep going. Yeah.
That's good.
I just thought, you were just wanted to make sure that I talked about We Need Diverse Books. You weren't trying to cut me off.
No.
Okay then.
You have a kid question.
Oh, kid question goes first. They're always better.
Okay, the quick questions pause for now.
And I'll be back in a moment. Post silliness.
You ready? Not yet. Okay. Okay. She's not ready.
Go ahead.
Okay. Do you remember any teachers who made a difference in your life? And if yes, who and why? Like, can you tell us about that? If not, what do you wish your teachers had known or asked you growing up?
I mean, both of those. Because yes, I absolutely had great teachers. And I was a very bookish kid, so like me and school were like that. And what I liked, teachers that gave the notion that there wasn't just one answer, but that there are more than one way to look at it, because I was like this is the answer and I already know it, and they're like, yeah, but this is also true. You're not wrong, but this is also true, like pushing in that way. I probably didn't like it at the time, but looking back on it, like that was the kind of stuff I needed. And you had a second half of that.
Well, so you had.
What I wish they had done, and it's not just teachers, but the world in general. I wish that someone had ever acknowledged that there were other ways of being, that there were trans people around. It was very, 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 I mean, it was either insult or hush-hush. And neither of those are good ways to live. And so I just didn't connect myself to trans because it was just painful. Which is why would I be a bad thing? I don't want to be a bad thing. So I'm just different and weird, and I like Legos and books and like what? And I stand on this side, okay, I stand on this side, what do I know? Until I realized that I was just squashing and squashing and squashing. And I don't know what kinds of things I said when I was like 5 years old. My mother has since been like, yeah, I don't know how things have gone if you had been born today. Because I know I said things, right? And they were just squashed down. So I wish that someone had heard the things I was saying, because I don't even know what they are. Yeah. I don't have record of them. Yes?
Thank you so much for your book. As a social worker, I can't tell you how much I love it. It's remarkable. I'm reading it with my 9-year-old right now. And, I think your choices around the gendered environment have brought back so many memories of my own being like the tallest in my grade and being, at the back of the line, the boys' line, and, all these gendered things that would happen and how they still happen today. Being in like H&M with my daughter, and she's like, why do I have to choose where to shop? Why do I have to choose a boys' side or a girls' side? Can't there just be a neutral side?
Or where are the shirts and the pants?
Right.
Or like the frilly things and the you can get dirty in them thing. Well, you can get dirty in frilly things too, so. But yeah.
And so I feel like I read the first half so quickly because I was so anxious about Melissa telling someone to, and talking. And so, there was that choice you made with the first disclosure and then the sister and the brother, the mom and the brother. And so how did you work when that was going to happen? Because I felt like I was like, I need like Melissa to share this, please,
Lots of edits. Changing things around. But it definitely, it was about making it her choice to say it because she wanted to, not because she felt like she had to. And some of the early ones, she's like brimming with it, and that's like, so she can't really say it because she doesn't want to say it. She just doesn't know how not to say it, but she doesn't know how to say it. And that is a little bit different from being able to share the information. And so she sort of made that shift early in the first half. Does that answer it?
Yeah.
Okay, what made Melissa want to be a girl?
What made Melissa want to be a girl? We're coming back to this question again. Okay. What made Melissa want to be a girl? I would say she didn't want to be a girl. I would say she is a girl. But the trouble is that no one is hearing her when she says that. Because when she was born, she looked like a boy, she had all the boy parts, and they're like, boy stamp. Right? And then as she started to be able to be aware of herself, she was looking at the things that boys do. She was looking at the things that girls do, and there's a range of them both, right? And she was like, well, I'm like this, I like this, I like this, I like this. And so that's going on. But at the heart of it, these people are not my people. I don't feel like these people. I feel like these people. This feels good. This feels right. I can't tell you why, Mom. It just is. Did that give a good idea of how we do that?
Yeah.
Did that work for you? All right. so that's the kid version of it. The adult version, a similar thing that I like to say to adults, when people tell me, in fact, there's my least favorite compliment. My least favorite compliment, and so I'm telling you now so you don't have to give it to me, is, I'm so glad I read your book, because now I understand what it's like to be trans. First of all, no you don't. You might have more insight, and great for you, but to be frank, and they might have noticed, I am Frank. Alex, Frank, Gino. I actually don't care if you understand what it is to be trans. If you are a cis person, don't care. I care that you respect trans people whether or not you understand it. And the easiest way that this has made sense to me, because I'm trans, so I understand trans. So I don't really understand not understanding trans. But, unless I am this sick, I don't drink tea. So I don't understand people who drink tea when coffee is available. Like, why would you do that? There is coffee. The better thing is here. Why? I don't understand you, but I can still put tea out, and I actually don't have to say rude things about tea. Right? This does not have to be the moment where I talk about I drink coffee and I don't understand tea. You know what? I can just have my coffee, because that person doesn't need to know what I think of tea. That person doesn't care what I think of tea. And so that's the difference between respecting and understanding.